ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
There are times you'll spend months preparing for that special day, like when your child is born or when you get hitched to the love of your life. You get so invested that you might start to lose perspective.
You're so wanting it, and sometimes you will do things that you're not really proud of to, get that.
And your special day becomes unforgettable.
We looked up the list, your name wasn't on it.
For all the wrong reasons.
You give me your word, we shook hands on it.
Lack of respect. It goes straight back to the government.
Births, deaths and marriages. The new mini-series by Background Briefing. Available now on ABC Listen.
The security camera vision is remarkable. A health insurance executive is shot in the back as he walks down a New York City street. Then, for almost a week, the offender evades police before his arrest after being spotted at a McDonald's this week. It's a captivating murder case because, unusually, some people seem to gleefully rally behind the gunman. A sign of deep anger in America when it comes to healthcare and insurance. Today, North America correspondent Carrington Clarke on how the case unfolded. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal Land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Carrington, there are plenty of murders in New York City, but this one has really captured the attention of all Americans, of course, but also it's gained headlines around the world.
A manhunt is underway in New York after a senior executive of an American health insurance company was shot dead on the street.
Brian Thompson led the insurance arm of United Health, one of the largest health providers in the US. Police are offering a reward of up to $10,000 for information relating to the shooting.
The death of Brian Thompson has sparked a manhunt across New York City and pointed a spotlight on health coverage in the United States.
So, before we get to the arrest of this 26-year-old man, I just want to step back and start by talking about Brian Thompson. He's the victim. Tell me about him.
Yeah, so before his murder, Brian Thompson wasn't particularly well known. He was the CEO of United Healthcare, which is one of the nation's largest health insurers. He's 50 years old. He was making reported around $10 million a year, so he was very well paid, but it wasn't like he was a celebrity CEO. He might have been known within his industry, but he wasn't known to the public at large. The brazen nature, which is the way that it was originally described by the police when they investigated this killing, took people by surprise at the very beginning, which is why it was making headlines. This was done in the morning in Manhattan, one of the most heavily populated areas on Earth. And it did very quickly start to look like an organised assassination, which is not the type of murder that you typically see, even in a city that does have such a major problem with it, like New York.
And of course, Carrington, the amazing thing is that there was CCTV vision of that exact moment when Brian Thompson was killed. There are a lot of cameras in New York City, and those images were flashed around the world.
That's exactly right. And the images are haunting. A lot of people will have only seen them up to the point when the trigger is pulled on this weapon, which is quite shocking. And it's not just the interaction between this assassin and Mr. Thompson in the final moments of his life, but also the witnesses who are there and run for their life as this plays out.
Yeah, it's a shocking crime. And really intriguing too, Carrington, is that the bullet shell casings that were found at the scene, they had words written on them. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this crucial piece of evidence came out about the casings that were found at the scene of the killing. And they had the words inscribed on them, deny, defend, and depose. This has been reported by multiple reputable news organizations here in the United States who all have very good sources within the police force. But this has not been officially given out by the police as they were investigating this crime to start off with. But those three words seem to very clearly indicate a particular motive, because they're known as the 3 Ds of insurance by critics of the health insurance industry as the tactics that are used by those companies to refuse to pay to clients when they need money for healthcare. So it very quickly started to look like the motivation for this killing had to do specifically with the health insurance industry.
So, Carrington, that brings us to the arrest. The suspect was finally spotted having a meal at McDonald's.
Yeah, it's another kind of extraordinary chapter to this story that is played out in real time. The police were releasing updates, a vision that we saw around Manhattan. They believed that the person of interest, as they were then describing them, had left the island of Manhattan. They'd seen them at a bus stop. They had managed to get this surveillance vision, a photograph, which showed the suspect with their face exposed. Up until that point, he'd been wearing a face covering. And that seems to have been a crucial turning point. And it appears that the suspect has now been arrested in Pennsylvania.
Officers say 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was taken into custody in Pennsylvania. New York City Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch alleges he was carrying a gun with a silencer, multiple fake IDs, and a handwritten document speaking to a possible motivation.
Luigi Mangione was spotted at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, and so the police have then moved into that fast food joint. They've asked him to remove his face covering and then asked him to provide some identification. It appears that the identification that has been handed to the police is the same fake identification that was used in Manhattan, where the suspect reportedly stayed at a hostel for a matter of days leading up to the killing.
All right, and they also found a firearm on him, didn't they? And that was kind of intriguing because the New York Police Department's chief of detectives, Joseph Kenney, told the press that it looked like it had been made from a 3D printer, which is extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are what are described as ghost guns. So instead of a gun being manufactured by a traditional manufacturer, you are able to download designs from the internet, from the dark web in particular, which allow you to build your own firearm at home.
And apparently this 26-year-old, when he was arrested, he had some sort of manifesto, handwritten manifesto on him. Did that sort of explain his motive in any way? What did police have to say?
So the police are being very careful with the information that they are releasing to the public, particularly around this manifesto. And this is also an interesting ethical question for us as journalists, because obviously whenever there are acts that appear to be of political violence, what you don't want to be doing is encouraging other people to carry out similar crimes, knowing that they will receive a huge amount of attention for whatever cause it is that they might be pushing. But at the same time, we have a duty to inform the public about why it is that particular acts are taking place and what might be the motivation behind them. It appears from other reporting that we're seeing that there is terminology being utilized in this manifesto, in this document, these handwritten documents that do seem to go to motive, that he had a particular gripe with corporate America, and that might have been the motivation for what appears at this point to be, again, quite an extraordinary assassination of a business leader in America's largest city.
Well, Carrington, now let's just turn to the response that the public has had to this very shocking crime, because unfortunately it unleashed a torrent of very morbid glee from some Americans who have had negative experiences with the health insurance industry. It's pretty incredible what we've seen.
It is incredible, and I think it was really shocking to watch how it played out. And I think for people who aren't in America, trying to understand what's behind this kind of vitriolic, in some ways cruel response to the killing of a 50-year-old man, the father of two, a man who leaves behind a widow, is difficult. The response seemed to be directly tied to this idea that there are parts of corporate America, but particularly the health insurance industry, that have ruined people's lives. The American healthcare system is set up very differently than what we know in Australia. The vast majority of Americans receive their healthcare through health insurance providers. By and large, they are for-profit organisations, and they have an incentive to maximise the returns to shareholders. And that means they are in conflict often with their clients when it comes to paying out for very expensive medical care. And so there are obviously people with strong ideological views that health insurance should not be a for-profit business. And this particular killing did seem to ignite on social media this outpouring of anger towards health insurance companies. And it was interesting hearing from the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro, after the suspect was taken into custody. And one of the things that he said that I thought was quite striking is he said that we should not be dehumanizing Mr. Thompson, the victim in this case, and to just make him, as he put it, an avatar for a system that is disliked.
He was a father, he was a husband, and he did not deserve to die like this on a sidewalk in New York City. In some dark corners, this killer is being hailed as a hero. Hear me on this. He is no hero.
Just let's have a bit more of a look at what happens now, because this 26-year-old will face court, of course, but once that happens, it doesn't take away that underlying anger that we've seen across social media. There's this kind of lack of trust in corporations and institutions in America. And we saw that, didn't we, when Donald Trump won the election?
Yes, and I think one of the other features of 2024 is going to be now high-profile instances of what appear to be politically motivated violent acts, including this killing, but also the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. There seems to have been now these instances of people believing that the way that they can change the system is to take justice into their own hands. And that is something that America is going to need to work through.
And Carrington, it must be a really concerning time for the health industry, right? It must send a chill down the spine of all CEOs or other people working in that industry.
Absolutely. And we know that the health insurance industry is aware that there is a risk of their workers being targeted. There have already been other large health insurance companies taking steps to ensure the safety of their workers because they are concerned about copycat instances. And so there are obviously questions being asked about what else health insurance companies, other big corporations can do in order to protect their staff, but also obviously deal with some of the underlying grievances.
Carrington Clarke is the ABC's North America correspondent based in Washington. And you may have seen that Rupert Murdoch has lost his court battle to change his family's trust to give full control of his empire to his son Lachlan. If you want to understand what the media mogul was trying to do, we covered that on September the 13th. This episode was produced by Cara Jensen McKinnon and Anna John. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm I'm Sam Hawley. ABC News Daily will be back again tomorrow. Thanks for listening.